It is my very great pleasure to introduce the recipients of the inaugural University of Oregon Sustainability Award for Sustainable Student Programming and Support. This new award is sponsored by the Division of Student Life and recognizes an individual, team, or departmental unit for student-focused programs, projects, or initiatives related to sustainability. The winners include Taylor McComb, the director of the Student Sustainability Center, Zeta Hatfield, a student employee in the SSC who brought the project to life, and Zara Pastos and Matt Wilson, both of whom work as career readiness coaches in the UO's Career Center. Together, these four led a professional clothing drive for UO students. So welcome Taylor, Zeta, Zara, and Matt.
Thank you.
So the first question is just tell me about the initiative for which you won this award.
Yeah, Zeta, do you want to start it off?
Yeah. So most of the employees at the Student Sustainability Center have gone to WOHESC for the last 2 years. So my freshman year, we went to Washington, and I kind of got this idea from a group similar at, Taylor, what's the name?
Willamette University.
Willamette University, okay. I wasn't sure, I thought so. So kind of just brought the idea back to UO, and it really just came to life way more than we thought it would. So we just kind of started brainstorming, and the idea was, in short, to provide professional clothing to the UO community free of charge. Yeah, so we kind of just reached out to a bunch of people, and this is the team that pulled it all together.
Great. And it, in one sense it makes sense, but I'm curious for Zara, for Matt, how did the Career Center get pulled in?
Yeah, I think that was our executive director reached out to Taylor, and I actually don't know how that connection got made. I know that it sort of happened that the same day the leadership from both centers connected. Zara and I were in the EMU, and we wandered into the Sustainability Center and kind of got roped into this idea. I think the cool thing about it is that we had talked about it, and once we started talking to folks around campus, it seemed like this idea had been around for a while, but it wasn't until Zeta really took the initiative to get it going that we were able to get it off the ground.
Great. And I know the Student Sustainability Centers had sort of a free clothing store for a while now, where students can drop off clothes if they don't want anymore and pick up another shirt or whatever that they're looking for. Was this run similarly? Did you get most of the clothes from students?
So the free store is mostly student donations. This one was faculty and staff. So with the free store, people come to the Student Sustainability Center and they drop it off. And we kind of do like a Buffalo Exchange thing where we look at the clothes and take most of it and then, don't take some of it. And then for this drive, it was totally different setup. I was kind of like going around campus on a golf cart with, we got big barrels and we made them purple so that they didn't look like recycling, they didn't look like garbage. And we dropped them off at 8 different career centers across campus. And then we were kind of blown away at how quickly they were filling up, and then we were, collecting. So I would say that was the most like active and like hands-on that I've kind of done so far at the SSC. And it was cool to like interact with people and see how they were like excited to get it going too.
Yeah,
so we run a similar program at the end of the year that's called a gown share program, and the idea being that we collect graduation gowns and when folks are done with them and get them back out. So we kind of had a system in place already in terms of how we were going to collect them, but as Zeta mentioned or alluded to, we get a lot of trash thrown in those barrels, and so we wanted to try to figure out ways to do it. And that was part of our focus too, of reaching out to faculty and staff and putting those barrels mostly in places where faculty and staff work, rather than that were highly trafficked by students. The idea being that professionals, folks like Zara, Matt, and myself, and you, Sarah, we have clothing attire, right? We have professional clothing that we have worn and then not worn for quite some time. And the idea was to sort of source from that so that we could give it to students to make sure that they didn't have to actually buy anything before they went out on their interviews.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious if what sort of impacts did the program have? Do you have a sense of how much you collected or how many students engaged with it?
I'm not so much sure about numbers of students. I think Zara and Matt might have those more. But what I can say is that the Student Sustainability Center was just flooded with clothes. I would spend some of my hours in there. Some of my friends would help me just like kind of organizing. And then towards the end of it, after we had like specific days and amounts of clothing, it was kind of just like, who wants it? Because we still had quite a bit left over.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say is we decided to reach out to faculty and staff. I think it was a couple weeks before the winter break, and kind of like just a heads up, we're going to have this professional clothing drive. So if you're doing some end of year cleaning, make sure to save those clothes. So we gave them a heads up, and then kind of sent out a reminder at the beginning of the winter term when we were getting ready to start the drive. And that first week, we were just, I think everywhere we were flooded with clothes. We had a bin in the Career Center in Tykesen, and I think Taylor, I can't remember if it was Taylor or Zeta, reached out and they're like, hey, let's meet, let's figure out a plan here, because we're getting a lot more clothing than we had ever fathomed. And people were reaching out and saying, hey, where do I bring this? And it just, yeah, just flooded. So we were just like really impressed and overwhelmed with what was going on.
Matt, do you want to talk about numbers at all? Matt and I were having this conversation earlier today, actually, when we were reviewing and prepping for the interview.
Yeah, definitely. So we had 3 events where we had the pop-up clothing store happen. One in the Sustainability Center, one in the University Career Center, and then one just outside of the winter internship and job fair. And so between those 3 events, we served over 200 students and gave anywhere from 300 to 400 items of clothing out. And that, even those 400 items, really didn't even really touch the amount of donations that we received. So folks came out in strong numbers, and the students really responded in turn to come pick up these items.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I'm also curious, how was it working on such a collaborative and cross-departmental project that included full-time staff, but also a student employee, 2 different units? And why do you think it's valuable to engage in this kind of collaborative work? And how does it further sustainability at our institution?
So I'll take a first stab at it. I think that sustainability in and of itself is about the integration of multiple different systems, right? And one of the things that we talk about at the Student Sustainability Center all of the time is making sure that a sort of human equity and social piece of it doesn't go missing from that conversation around sustainability. So many people are able to talk about the recycling or the light bulbs, but there's always a human equity piece. And that's really kind of the mission of the Division of Student Life, is to reach out and to try to help students and to provide them opportunities and skills and resources that they aren't necessarily getting through their classes, right? And so when this idea came up, it was a really natural partnership. Of course, it would make sense for us to collaborate with our partners within the Division of Student Life at the Career Center, because these are the folks who are going to be, you know, getting students career ready after college. Are going to be connecting them to employers that are going to be talking to them about interviews and putting resumes together, and, you know, even LinkedIn headshots and all of that kind of stuff. So in that way, you know, it's a true collaborative program, and really kind of the only way that it could work is if it was really collaborative. And of course, students are always driving that programming. So Zeta's, you know, insight on it was fundamental to the project, right? There's no way that we could have been successful without having someone who's actually seeing it from a student perspective and putting forward the idea, where the idea came from. So I think all of those pieces together, that they really drive home the idea that sustainability is always about integrating multiple different stakeholders and multiple different partners, and really making sure that folks are partnering together.
Yeah, I like what Taylor said. I think issues of food and clothing, accessibility and poverty, those are issues that are obviously impact, you know, social and economic equity in addition to the environmental component. So I think it is a campus-wide initiative, and it was so important to have Zeta's from her student perspective, collaborating, giving the student perspective, and all of us together, you know, for that common goal of sustainability and equitability for the students that we serve on campus. And that's one thing, the Career Center, in terms of career services, we serve all students. We're open to all students, and so it made sense to make that, to have that collaboration with a student center for sustainability. And so, yeah, for me, it was a natural collaboration, and I really enjoyed working with Zeta and Taylor on this, and as well as Matt.
Yeah, and I will say that this project initially, like, it was a lot of kind of reaching out and like, who wants to work with this? And like, as they both said, it just kind of came together naturally. And as from the student perspective and, ethnic studies major, I work with the Black Scholars in Umoja. So like, these are topics that are really close to home for me. So I'm kind of, not only am I trying to bring those resources to attention and create those resources, I'm myself also benefiting from them. And it's been really inspiring me to be able to really see people benefit from this. It's beyond the idea now, and it's like we go to school and we go to class and we don't really know what we're doing. So this has been special to me to kind of see it like make a difference, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I'm curious if you think maybe it's Zeta, but anyone else as well, that in one sense it seems like students are a good audience for this because they tend to have lower incomes, and so but they still need this professional clothes if they're interviewing for internships or jobs or other positions, or even just like Zeta mentioned, going to a conference and wanting to look a little more professional than they might when just going to classes or what have you. On the other hand, do you think maybe a generational shift could be happening where it's not just about whether or not you have the means to go buy new clothes, but more a perspective shift of, I don't need to go buy new clothes. There are perfectly good existing resources out there that I can tap into, and that's better for the world.
Yeah, I think definitely working with different students through so many organizations, some of them being the environmental arc, or I'm kind of blanking, but there's a lot of organizations that go through the Student Sustainability Center. So a lot of that last year with the free stores, like, absolutely, it's a thrift store for free inside of the university. So I learned that fast fashion is the #1 polluter. And I definitely think like Oregon's a good place to start this out. Yeah, I definitely think that it is more than just like it's here and available, but a lot of people are seeing it through that perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that Zeta often talks about, so I'm going to crib from her, is just this idea of destigmatizing thrifting, right? So if we think about thrift stores as a kind of, certainly my generation or growing up, that was a place where you went if you couldn't afford new. And I think that conversation has changed. And a lot of the work that we're trying to do here is around changing that conversation as well, right? These are places where good, usable goods are still available. And yes, they happen to be cheaper, but there is no reason why a shirt that's only been worn 3 or 4 times should not continue to be worn. So part of what Zeta's really been pushing with the free store is to demonstrate that this is a very normal thing, and you can still get really quality items that as soon as you take them home and put them in your closet are not going to be any discernibly different than the clothing that you bought off the rack brand new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious for Zara and Matt, from a preparing students for the workforce kind of perspective, how do you advise them on picking professional clothes and how they might still put together a wardrobe using used items?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had some really nice graphics that we put up at the free stores, courtesy of the USC Career Center, and just focusing on simple, neutral colors and guiding students about how to be professional even when maybe you came to the free store hoping that you would walk out with a suit and there wasn't something in your size. What's the next best alternative? How do you make it work where you're at? And so that's a lot of the conversation that we have, because even before the free store, the free professional store, we would meet with students and they didn't have access to certain things. And so how do you make the best with what you have? And those are a lot of the conversations that I have with students. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, talking about professionalism in general, and then what does that mean to an individual student that makes them feel professional? And I credit Matt. We put together an email when we asked for the clothing from staff and faculty to, we're trying to get a range of sizes and colors and styles that were going to be inclusive. And when we started collecting some of the clothing, Matt had the idea to put, for example, like all larges together, whether they're, traditionally male larges or female larges. So just thinking about trying to be inclusive to students and making them feel comfortable so that when we set up the store, and I think, a lot of credit to all the Career Center staff for helping us set up that pop-up store that we had in the Career Center. It looked like a clothing store, but just really giving them a range of styles and sizes and things to pick from to put their own style together and still feel like they're being professional.
I think the other thing to kind of think about in terms of like a mental shift is like all of us right now are wearing used clothing. It just happened to be used by us, right? But very few people are putting on a new garment every single time they go into work. And so basically, we asked folks to give us not the stuff that you don't wear anymore because it's, worn out, but the stuff that you don't wear anymore because of style, or you got sick of it, or it just doesn't, it's the wrong season, or you just got lost in the back of your closet. And all of that stuff, again, as soon as you put that on and it's yours, it becomes no different than any other shirt or pants that you have in your closet. It's also used.
Yeah. So my last question is usually around the University of Oregon and engaging with sort of the three aspects of sustainability, but I feel like you all actually already addressed that, which is awesome. I'll just wrap up by saying, are you going to do this again next year using the same clothes that you still have around, or another drive? What are you thinking?
We certainly have enough. I mean, faculty and staff, as everyone has mentioned, really, really stepped up and took a strong support in this. And so our office right now, the Student Sustainability Center is, here we are remote, but all of those clothes are patiently waiting students to return. And there are still lots and lots of them. So I mean, from our end, right, I think that makes every bit of sense to continue on with this. And I think we can actually just start thinking about different ways of being strategic and how we're doing it and how frequently we're doing it and when things are available. Or are we doing pop-ups here, or is it just in front of career fairs, or is there some set of clothing that's available to everyone all the time? And I think those are the kinds of next steps, but it'll definitely happen again.
Great.
Yeah, well said.
All right. Well, thanks to all of you, and thank you for your work as well. And congratulations on this award.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.